If you're thinking about moving to Portland, Oregon, there's one question you need to answer before you start browsing Zillow, and that is, can you actually afford to live here? Because Portland has a bit of reputation. People have said that it's gotten too expensive, and others think it's still a steal compared to a lot of the other West Coast cities like Seattle or the Bay Area or LA. And honestly, both of those things can be true depending on which Portland you're looking at. In this video, I'm going to break down the real cost of living in Portland in 2026, housing, groceries, utilities, transportation, taxes, and I'm going to tell you exactly what income you actually need to live comfortably here, because that number might actually surprise you. Before we get into the numbers, really quickly, if you're planning to move to Portland and you want to talk through your budget and what it can actually get you here, I'd be happy to be a resource. No pitch or pressure, just a real conversation about what the market looks like right now and how that might pertain to your life. I have a link in the description below to book a meeting with me. I'm Andy Harris with Foris Real Estate and eXp Realty, and I've been working in the Portland real estate market for over 11 years and in real estate in general for over 17 years. So now let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the number that drives everything else, and that's housing, because in Portland in 2026, housing costs are doing something interesting. We're not seeing the explosion that we saw in pricing in 2021 and 2022, but we're also not exactly cheap. Here's what the market looks like right now. Median home prices in Portland have been ranging from about $525,000 to about $570,000 in the last few years. What you can get at the various price points really depends on the location and the condition and the property type, etc. There are housing options to buy starting in the $100,000 range, but those are generally going to be smaller condos. Single family homes in reasonable condition are generally starting around $400,000, though that can be higher depending on what neighborhood you're in. If you're not ready to buy, here's the rental picture. These are just estimates, as it'll really depend on what you're looking for and where, but a one-bedroom apartment in Portland is probably going to start around $1,200 a month. A two-bedroom house is looking about $1,600 to $1,700 a month, and a three-bedroom house is starting at approximately $2,200 a month and going up from there. Here's one thing that a lot of people don't factor in. If you're renting in Portland long-term, the rent versus buy math can actually tip towards buying a lot faster than you'd expect, depending on your situation, but that's a whole nother video. But if you do have questions about that, just reach out. Of course, not all of Portland is created equal. The inner east side and inner west side, those closest to downtown, tend to be the priciest. The downtown area and urban core is mostly condos, townhomes, and apartments. I think there's actually some really good deals right now, as the prices have been trending downwards there for a few years. The suburb pricing tends to run the gamut. You have areas like Lake Oswego and West Lynn on the higher end of the pricing scale. Then as you push further out into areas like Hillsborough and Gresham, your dollar goes a lot further. If budget is your primary driver, the outer east side of Portland and the further out neighborhoods tend to be lower priced. Okay, let's get into the grocery costs. Portland's grocery costs are roughly 5 to 10% higher than the national average. You've got everything here like Whole Foods, New Seasons, which is a Portland institution, Trader Joe's, Safeway, and Fred Meyer. For a family of four, budget's somewhere in the $900 to $1,200 a month range for groceries if you're cooking most meals at home. If you're doing a lot of runs to New Seasons and buying local, budget quite a bit higher. My family of three shops at New Seasons, and it's pretty darn pricey, but we like it. Okay, utilities. Here's one area where Portland actually wins. Thanks to PGE and Pacific Power, electricity rates are below the national average. A 2,000 square foot home is probably going to run you about $80 to $150 a month. Gas is pretty moderate, and the internet is pretty competitive. Figure maybe $50 to $100 a month for solid fiber service. So the total average power utilities are going to run you about $200 to $350 a month. That's generally what you'd pay in most metro areas. Transportation. Portland has one of the better public transportation systems here on the West Coast. Things like the Max Light Rail, buses, and the streetcar. That Tri-Met pass is going to run you about $100 a month. Car insurance in Portland averages around $130 to $170 a month. Parking downtown will run you about $150 to $300 a month if you need a dedicated spot. One thing that might surprise some people who are moving from outside the area is Portland is very bikeable. Depending on where you live and work, a car can generally be optional here. Okay, as for dining out and entertainment, Portland has legitimately one of the best food scenes in the country. The trade-off is it's not super cheap. A dinner for two at a mid-range restaurant is going to run you about $70 to $110 with drinks. Coffee is a pretty serious business here, and that's going to run you about $4 to $7 a cup at the good spots. And if you're social and eating out regularly, budget at least $400 to $600 a month for dining and entertainment as a couple. All right, let's get into taxes. This can really be one of the more misunderstood things about living here, and it really goes both ways. The good news is there's no sales tax, so zero. Though every time you buy something, you're saving money, like groceries or clothes or car, electronics. If you're coming from Washington or California, that's a pretty meaningful, real difference that you feel in your daily life. Of course, the trade-off is that the state income tax that Oregon has is pretty significant. It's on one of the higher ones in the nation. The top marginal rate is 9.9%. So for most working adults in the, say, $75,000 to $150,000 range, you're probably looking at a marginal income tax in the 7 to 9% range. So if you're coming from a state with no income tax like Texas or Nevada or Washington, this is going to be a noticeable shift for you. I always recommend people run numbers with a CPA before making the move, because the overall tax picture, including property taxes and the sales tax and the income tax, can shake out differently than you'd expect. Property taxes in Portland are fairly moderate. It really kind of depends on where you are, but it's going to be about 1 to 1.2% of the assessed value of the home. On a $550,000 home, that's roughly $5,500 to $6,000 a year, or about $460 to $550 a month. So, and just a quick note, Multnomah County, where Portland is, tends to have the highest property taxes in the area, higher than counties like Clackamas and Washington and Clark County in Southwest Washington. Okay, now let's get into what income you actually need to live here. This is the question that everyone really wants answered. What do you need to earn to live comfortably in Portland in 2026? All right, let me break this down by tier. Tier 1, let's just say the getting by tier, say $65,000 to $80,000 for an individual and $90,000 to $110,000 for a household. At this income level, you're probably renting a 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom in a less central neighborhood, maybe driving an older car and cooking at home most nights. You can make Portland work at this income, but you're not living large. Okay, let's look at the tier 2. This is maybe you're comfortable renting or getting into buying territory. You're at about $90,000 to $120,000 as an individual and $130,000 to $160,000 as a household. This is where Portland starts to feel generally good. You can rent a nice 2-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, maybe save for a down payment and look for a place to buy, eat out pretty regularly, and enjoy everything the city has to offer without constant financial stress. Okay, now we're looking at tier 3. This is really the homeowner tier, $140,000 to $160,000 and up. Maybe you're buying in the $550,000 to $750,000 range, which is going to get you into a lot of the inner east side or inner west side areas. You'll be looking at a mortgage of around $3,200 to $4,500 a month. Add in other living expenses, you need a whole household income of in the approximately $140,000 to $180,000 range to feel comfortable and not stretched. If you're coming from the Bay Area, LA, or Seattle at these income levels, Portland is going to feel pretty cheap and open up all sorts of options for you. So here's the bottom line of Portland in 2026. The city is not cheap, but is generally more affordable than most areas out here in the West Coast. And unlike a lot of markets, you still get real neighborhoods with amazing character, incredible access to nature, and wonderful cultural opportunities. Whether Portland makes sense financially, it really comes down to your lifestyle and your income and what you're comparing it to. If you want to run those numbers with someone who actually lives here and works here, I'm available to chat. Hit the link in the description below to book a time to chat, or shoot me an email at andy@forisre.com. No obligations and no pressure. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel for future video notifications, and check out all my other videos. I'm Andy Harris with Foris Real Estate, brokered by eXp Realty. I'll see you on the next one.